everybody, to Recovery Strategies for Life. This is session 1, week 1, the introduction to what we're doing with this and who we are and what we're about. So my name is Paula Mosier-Wallace, and I'm a ministry leader that's working with the spiritual side of our growth and healing. And this is
Evonna, and I'm a licensed professional counselor.
And I'm Ginny. I'm the single-handed serenity coach. Single-handed because that's the way God made me, completely single-handed.
Yes.
It's fun. I like to have my handy props around.
And the handy jokes.
And the handy jokes that go along with it, yes. God just likes to spice things up with a little bit of humor every now and then.
Absolutely. And I am coming at this course from a perspective of 40 years worth of damage and abuse and addictions and emotional damage, panic attacks, and a lot of hardship, and 10 years of intensive healing that God wanted me to deconstruct and help put together into a 1-year process that we could share. And he brought a team that has also had their own stories that brought him here. Ivana, tell us about you.
Well, I did not end up in the counseling field for no reason. It was through my brokenness that landed me on the other side of the couch. And so with that, I have had several years now of healing and growth, and but my story started with childhood sexual abuse as well, and led into a domestic violent relationship and a lot of other junk and brokenness. So today I'm here to spread and share hope and healing, and I'm excited that each one of you are here.
Me too. And with my story, I definitely started with, physical difference.
Yes.
Started off the story from the beginning. And then I had a lot of codependency in my past, which led to alcoholism and some really terrible, awful relationships, romantic and friendship, and which led to, all of the drinking led to the DUI. The jail cell woke me up one day, and I said, okay, maybe it's time to change some things. So started to get into recovery from there, and I've been heavy duty in that recovery for about 6.5 years at this point. So it's been an amazing, incredible journey, and I'm so excited that we get to do this and we get to use our broken past to bring hope and healing to everyone else. Because I remember when I felt totally hopeless. I remember when I thought there was nothing beyond this moment of shame and brokenness. This must be the end, but it's not the end. God showed me there is more to your story. If he woke you up this morning, he has more for you. He has a purpose for you. So this is going to be one of those, oh my goodness, just powerful pieces I think that God can use in our lives to really just bring all of the healing that he has for us together.
And it's so incredible that we have like in my case, a 10-year healing process. And God's like, yeah, so put that together into a 1-year step-by-step process that you can take in bits and pieces and walk through in a strategic way, because we all come from those places of brokenness. And I think about, what my journey would have looked like if I had had a way to go through this process, because all of these components that we're going to be talking about in this course, I went through haphazardly. This emergency led to this treatment, led to this help, led to this ministry, led to this piece, and it was all these crazy moving parts over 10 years. And with this, we have all worked to put it together in a way that we can just systematically walk through a journey that's pretty amazing. I'm excited because I know I'm going to continue growing and healing through doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's all inclusive.
Yes.
You don't have to go shop around. It's all inclusive. And as a trauma therapist for the last 5 years, I'm just excited to be a part of this because I've worked with so many different victims, and there's just not been that curriculum, that help that is out there that's all inclusive. And this is really going to help you with your body, your soul, and your spirit. And that's really important that you heal, because our hurts all happen on all those 3 different levels, and so that we heal on all 3 levels as well.
Right, and we've experienced so many of those components and have them go back and forth and interact. And people ask, well, this curriculum you're doing, who's it for? And of course, we think it's for everybody.
Absolutely. Everyone needs it. hands down, because we all have brokenness. This world is broken. We've all experienced something, and no matter how I've been hurt or you've been hurt, Paula, or you, Ivana, there's always the worst level of hurt that we've had is always the worst that we feel. So my 10 is different from your 10, but it's still a 10 in my book.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we need to be able to say, okay, there's brokenness, but we don't have to stay there. There is the hope and healing that's available. So why not get it?
There's a way out of this mess.
Yes, absolutely.
Do we have some strategies to help us out of it?
I think we actually are going to talk about 3 of those strategies
today, but
Three
we
of
have
those strategies
a
today.
lot of those strategies over the course of the next year. Actually, yeah, it's going to be amazing.
So it's going to be a lot of fun to go through and understand that whether it's addiction or it's the loss of a loved one and you're working through grief or you're dealing with abuse of any type. We talk about spiritual abuse and emotional abuse, physical, mental, sexual, verbal, whatever it is that you have. This program is designed for you to adapt it to your story, to your brokenness. You don't need to be anywhere in line with one of our stories,
Right.
but you'll be able to use that to work through your issues. And with our strategies, we have strategy number 1. Ivana, what's number 1?
It's be honest with yourself. What? I have to start with honesty? And it's not about being honest with other people. It's really about being honest with yourself. Because if you can't be honest with yourself, forget going to a coach or a therapist, because you're not going to be honest with them either, because you have to start with yourself. So that's our first strategy.
Yeah, and that's the hardest one, I think. For me, I did a really, really good job of keeping blinders on to myself so that I wasn't even seeing my own heart. I had such a distant relationship with myself. I couldn't even log into my own feelings. I had shut them down as a toddler with abuse where I would get spanked till I quit crying. And that taught me physical pain stopped when I stopped the emotional pain, I stopped the emotional reaction. But then I was frozen emotionally across the board, which meant no good feelings either. So how did that work for you, Ginny?
Well, with emotions and getting honest with myself in, oh gosh, after so many years of trying to stay in denial and doing the very best that I possibly could to stay in denial, I watched a lot of television and I stuffed down a lot of emotions just to be able to distract myself, to go to the next thing or focus on a person and someone else who's hurting in their situation. Let me dive into their issues, because then I didn't have to think about my own. Because for me, what I thought was, if I had to actually come to terms with what I was feeling or the brokenness that I thought that I really had, it would mean that I was stuck there and I would have to live with that hurt and that pain and that shame forever. So I didn't want to look at it. It was just easier not to. And I had to really do a lot of it was a process for me to be able to keep looking at that intentionally, to stay focused on that, because it was so easy to want to dive into something else and be distracted and stuff down those emotions again. But I can't heal something if I'm refusing to look at it.
Right.
It's just impossible, unfortunately. And so the more healing I got, actually, the more and more I wanted to look at what's the next thing, because I knew that there was healing available for it.
And I did a lot of the same thing of numbing. I chose the numbing, coping.
Yeah.
Whether it was through anorexia or purging or self-medication or self-mutilization. Like, there was the whole range of tools that I was using at the time to numb out that pain, because
Really poor tools.
very poor tools, but
Painful tools.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. But it was it was the only way that I could deal with the emotional, is to cause myself physical pain. So when I started being honest with myself, I was able to realize that the pain that I was feeling went much deeper. And it took a long time and a lot of different avenues to get there, to realize that I'm in this mess not fully my responsibility, because some of the things that happened to me were not something that I could have stopped. So.
And it changes your perspective. I know that my worldview was so colored by my brokenness. I didn't even know what I was missing. I didn't know that by being numb to the pain, I was also shutting out the joy and the happiness and the excitement and fun. I was just serious and driven, performance-oriented, and no understanding that there was the possibility of really feeling joy.
Right.
I didn't laugh spontaneously. I wasn't capable of a whole lot of emotions. And it took being honest with myself about the fact that I had shut down so solidly before I had the chance to realize, oh wow, if I start working through this, then there's this joy and this life and all these things available over here for me. Because I didn't really believe that until I started facing the brokenness and seeing that I didn't have the joy and the happiness. And you know, for you watching this, do you have that joy? Do you have the happiness? Do you have the happy emotions? Yeah. Because sometimes if you really don't, it may be because you have shut down in a way that you're losing. Maybe you're like, oh, well, at least I don't feel all that pain or hardship.
Right.
Right, but you're losing everything else too. And sometimes we have to look at that to realize we want to change.
And the good news is we've all felt a range of deep, very painful emotions and panic attacks, and we've been through all of that, and the pain didn't kill us.
No.
It didn't. We got through it. We got to the other side, even if we thought it might at some point. No, God got us through, and we were able to dig out those hurting, infected wounds, and so we could bring in that healing.
And I think part of that is because of strategy number 2, is that we looked at it as recovery is a journey, not a destination. So you have to take it one day at a time, sometimes one moment at a time.
That is so true.
Sounds like that famous serenity prayer. So many recovery circles are using, but yeah, one day at a time, one moment at a time. We spent so much of our time, speaking of time, in the past with all of those poor coping skills, and that was our go-to. That was instinct, because it was a habit over time and it became instinct. And this journey is now about changing those instincts. So it's a process from changing from those old habits to bringing in new habits. And that is not going to happen quick overnight. So it's a journey, and we never really arrive until we get to heaven. Then we can arrive, but until then we're walking this out one step at a time, one day at a time.
And as a life coach, you're really good at helping people go from where they are today to where they're wanting to be. And as a counselor, Ivana, you're so good at helping people actually face and deal with the past that has brought them to where they are today, in their brokenness, in the hidden things, sometimes the things we even forget and shut down because we can't handle it. And so we do that. And to me, it's been amazing in working with the two of you. And my wheelhouse is more the spiritual side and what God says about it, and the ridiculous amount of King James that is permanently etched in my...
At least 80% of the King James is in your mind right now. Everything is accessible.
Which is funny. I mean, my first word as a baby was hallelujah, which my parents swear by that, and I don't know if it was the mission field or the fact that it was the universal word in an area where we spoke Spanish, you know, down in Peru, those different kinds of things. But coming at this perspective and understanding that a lifestyle many times of abuse and brokenness, of addiction, of hurt is what gets us to our broken places. But that it's changing that lifestyle to get us back into a place that even if new things happen, new damage happens, that when we have the skill set, when we have the practice, when we renewed our mind, when we have all that, then we can keep moving forward with all these tools where new damage doesn't send us right back to that super broken place. We may go back a little bit and have to bounce back, but it's a lifestyle and a process and a way of living that changes it, which is such a brand new thing that these last 10 years have brought into my life. And I'm excited.
And if you're looking at recovery strategies for life that we're doing here today as your quick fix,
it's not. It's not.
Quick fixes don't exist.
No, not at all.
I learned that the hard way.
You mean alcohol didn't fix it?
Nope, alcohol didn't fix it.
Food didn't fix my issues.
Yeah, and mine was such a conglomerate mix of what I called good addictions, right? So we're talking about escaping into books because good books are literary and they're healthy, or workaholism because, you know, you're doing good things, you're working hard, you're providing for it and doing things, but I laugh and it turns into a shopping addiction. Oops, that affects your money. And it turned into so many different things.
Too much of anything.
It doesn't fix anything.
It's still too much.
Right.
And it's destructive at some point or
Yeah.
another, and it messes with relationships and people and even our time with God, our understanding of ourselves. And with this, we're getting to work through piece by piece, where we're coming into alignment with God and truth, with relationships coming back into place, with balance in our lives instead of extremes, one way or the other. And so many times with brokenness, we do tend to gravitate to extremes. We're at one end of the pendulum or the other. And many times health is that midline where it's taking things in stride and living and expressing and working through emotions every day.
And sometimes it's trial and error.
Yes.
Right? Trying to figure out.
Messy.
Yeah, it's a messy process of where is it? Is this the right way to do it? Is that the right way to do it? How do I? And trial and error. Give yourself some grace as you're walking through this process. Give yourself some grace. Some things are, some strategies or some concepts might be a little bit more difficult for you to process through. They might be a little bit more difficult to grasp. That's okay. Don't be afraid to reach out if you need help, but give yourself grace through this process. It is not easy, and it is not going to happen overnight.
And remember that we do not fight against flesh and blood.
Yes.
And so,
important.
We have a real enemy of our soul, and he is going to probably come in at some point and fight you on this.
Yeah.
At least in my recovery journey, there were times where I was just in a intense spiritual battle. And so as you're starting to uncover some of the junk that's maybe really deep that you have maybe coped with for a while, just know that the enemy is going to fight you on that. And that's okay, because you have greater authority in you.
And we have accountability. We want to surround ourselves with people that are going to encourage us on this journey. We want to look to the people that can hold our hands and lift us up, and if we fall down, they help pick us back up again, because it is messy and it is difficult. And sometimes we think, well, there's nobody around that knows or cares, but if we ask God to bring those people into our lives, if we look around to see who has been there, who God has brought in, we have an opportunity to grow and do it in a team. And if you're doing this training as a group, which is what we really think is the best way to do it, if at all possible, then look to be building those relationships that are going to help strengthen you on this journey with some other people, so that when the enemy does come in and try to mess with you, you're not alone on it. You have the chance to be working with other people and have that kind of support.
Right. And with those spiritual attacks, it's usually high emotional attacks as well. That's what it feels like, either extreme oppression or aggression or fear or whatever that is. There's usually a spiritual relationship there that's trying to come in to affect the physical side of things, and that through the emotions is the best way for the enemy to kind of work that he's found, unfortunately. But yeah, always to be on the lookout for that. And
with the damage that happens, spirit, soul, and body, then we talk about the fact that we want to work through that healing journey, going through the spiritual things that got damaged, so that you have the spiritual things you can bring healing in, and then the emotional side that got damaged or stunted or broken, and how to bring in healing for healthy emotions. And then of course our physical well-being, and the fact that all of these things tend to cause psychosomatic diseases and sickness, illness, all these different things. And we want to walk into a healing place where we are healing on every level, not just part of it, which is really, really exciting.
And our third strategy, Ivana is going to help us with that. How now?
Baby step. Because how else do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It's the only way we can do that. This journey is to take it one step at a time.
And so you have to slow down and be thorough about it.
Absolutely.
Don't perform to just run through and answer questions or do stuff with the surface, superficial level of this. You're going to want to actually ask God to help you dig in to the deeper levels, to the underlying emotions and problems, the parts of your story that are harder to face, and do that so that the healing can go just as deep.
Yes. I totally agree.
And when we do it one step at a time, we're doing this without wearing ourselves down completely.
Right.
Because healing can be exhausting.
Yes.
But the pain is even more exhausting because it just takes so much out of us. So if you're taking it one step at a time, you're able to focus on, sometimes it's what's hurting you the most that you might want to start with, and sometimes it's what's hurting you the least that you might be comfortable starting with. It just depends on each individual person.
Absolutely.
And you can adapt this story to your story, like we were saying, and the pace is the same thing. Don't go about accomplishing or achieving some part of the program just as a checklist. Oh, I did that. But actually work to let it soak in and to do it at a deeper level so that you have a chance to recover step by step as you go through it. You're not feeling like it's too heavy. And we've tried to spread it out over the full year so that you don't need to be borrowing tomorrow's issues or processing. You can just work on today's, and that gives you the ability to kind of come up for air and start seeing that life and joy one piece at a time, every single day.
Right.
So
I know I had this idea that I would be just, going through in a few months and I'd be healed and everything would be great. And that is so not the case. It took some time for me to even recognize that I had to be thorough with this, or I wasn't getting a healing at all if I was just ticking those boxes, like you said, and walking through. I needed to have the time to let it sink in and let my mind be renewed by what it was that I was learning, including those things in the Word, because again, this is a journey. This is a lifestyle. This is not a quick fix. So it is going to be something where you want to be prepared for running the full marathon, not the sprint. Giving yourself grace for that marathon. It takes time to recognize the sort of energy and the toll that it takes to feel those emotions, to get those out, and the recovery time that you're going to need as a result of that.
And when you put all these pieces together and you build the solid foundation in your relationship with God, and then you go into getting rid of the way the damage has built up and the way that it tends to fester under the surface, where we like to pretend it's not there because we've hidden it, but it's still doing damage. It can eventually kill you if you don't go in and get that festering mess of our past out of there so that we can heal from the inside out.
So we're super excited that you guys are on this journey with us, and we look forward to coming back and speaking with you guys each week.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out to those that God puts in your path and ask Him to help you with that. And we're going to say goodbye for today and look forward to actually reaching out and talking to you next week.
Have a great and blessed week.
Thanks.
We all are hurting. We all need healing because we're all broken.
There's a lot of brokenness within us.
I struggled with drugs and alcohol.
Drugs, alcohol, and food.
Drugs and alcohol.
Drug addiction, pornography.
Pornographic thinking.
Cocaine addiction.
When I received a DUI, I needed a medical detox.
It was time to get the eating disorder under control.
I was very angry with God.
Anger and fear, primarily anger.
That pit of fear and despair.
I used to be very fearful.
Control, enabling, perfectionism.
Have anger or fear control me.
I didn't want to be the one in control anymore.
I lived in deceit and lies.
I actually had an affair.
Parenting alone.
I have been parenting alone for about 7 years, but I've been divorced for almost 3.
I was divorced.
People-pleasing, body image issues.
Codependency.
I think I was in a place where I felt like I didn't matter and I wasn't good enough. I was living out in abusive relationships.
The abuse started in my life when I was 2.
Trauma. At the age of 5, I was sexually molested.
I am a survivor of sexual abuse and rape.
My uncle who had sexually abused me.
My mother was raped, and out of that, I was conceived.
Abandoned. Betrayal.
At about 6 years old, I began to be kicked out and have to rake in the trunks of cars for a place to sleep.
You know, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and psychological abuse.
Childhood sexual abuse damages you, spirit, soul, and body.
I felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of guilt.
Who would want to work with a criminal? It was just shame and guilt, shame and guilt. I was in the middle of self-harming behaviors.
Self-harm or self-sabotage or holding myself back.
Self-mutilation. My mother committed suicide. I tried to commit suicide.
I physically felt like I was going to die.
I think we all are broken.
I realized that I really wasn't alone.
And all of us need healing.
You can be healed. You can have a brand new life.
I've been there, and there is hope, and there is healing.
I already have the victory.
It's available, that is possible. Maybe limitless.
And when I started introducing Jesus into other areas of my life and started asking him to work in other areas of my life, it just enhanced my recovery more.
Then we can move forward in the trust and love of God, and nothing can stop us from reaching the wholeness that we need to be able to impact the world around us.
But God can add that miraculous intervention that takes it away from being just a management system or treating symptoms, and actually go into those deep broken places and bring healing.
What was missing was the spiritual part of it.
But I hadn't known him as rescuer until he started to pull me out of that pit of fear and despair.
I just see my Heavenly Father is just perfect and holy and loves me so unconditionally.
When you have God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, when he comes in, when you allow the Spirit to come in, that God-given hole is filled with the Spirit of God.
I started to love myself and see myself through his eyes.
No performance, no perfectionism, no people pleasing.
I have that joy, and it does get me through everything.
You know, our mind and our will and our emotions is where a huge battle is taking place.
I remember telling Satan, you have messed with the wrong little woman. I had to learn to replace my negative self-labels, homewrecker, whore, failure, tainted, terrible mom.
I am who God says I am.
I am an overcomer. I am victorious. I am empowered. I am forgiven. I am free. I am blessed. I am favored. I'm anointed. I'm chosen. I'm strong. I speak with authority. I walk with authority. I talk with authority. I teach with authority.
Do you want to be free?
And we can apply those strategies as we go forth into battle.
And if you have the right tools, you can get the job done.
A tangible tool, reminders, until you get reprogrammed.
You do it one little step at a time.
Having those steps in my life helped me to find freedom.
The healing process of breaking free from the victim mentality.
Life gets really, really good